Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. These are the words of Francis Bacon, a philosopher whose reflections still echo across centuries. When we pause and allow silence to fill the space, something remarkable begins to happen. We open a door to wisdom that has always been waiting inside of us. In today's world, silence has almost become a forgotten language. From the moment we wake up, we are surrounded by noise notifications buzzing on our phones, traffic outside our windows, the chatter of colleagues, televisions playing in the background. It is as if silence itself has become uncomfortable, something we quickly try to fill with sound. But what if silence is not emptiness? What if silence is the greatest teacher we will ever meet? The teaching of silence is not loud. It does not demand your attention the way a shouting world does. Silence whispers, and to listen to it, you must first choose to slow down, to notice, and to welcome it into your life. Think about this. How many times have you made a decision in a rush, surrounded by noise, only to regret it later? Now compare it to the times when you took a quiet walk or sat alone with your thoughts, and the answer to your problem rose up naturally. That is the teacher we are talking about today, the teacher of silence. For many people in the USA and the UK, life moves at such a fast pace that silence feels like a luxury. Imagine a professional in New York City, working in a corporate office, where deadlines and emails keep flooding in every hour. When they finally step out for lunch, instead of enjoying a moment of peace, they pull out their phone, scroll through social media, and continue feeding the noise in their mind. By the time the day ends, they are exhausted, not just from work, but from the endless voices and distractions that filled every empty space. Silence, in this story, was missing. Now, imagine the same person, but this time, they choose to sit on a park bench during lunch. No phone, no music, just the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant sound of footsteps. At first, their mind still races thinking about tasks, responsibilities, and worries. But after a few minutes, something shifts. Their breath slows down, thoughts begin to settle, and in that stillness, clarity appears. This is not an empty silence. It is a fertile silence that teaches the mind to rest and reset. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. It allows us to listen not to the world outside, but to the world inside. The challenge is that many people are afraid of this inner silence. Why? Because when the noise stops, we begin to hear our true thoughts, our true emotions, and sometimes, our pain. Yet, only by listening to this inner self can we begin to understand who we really are. Let me share another example. A university student in London is preparing for final exams. They spend days in libraries, surrounded by the whispers of others, endless coffee cups, and constant pressure. Their phone keeps vibrating, friends chatting, social media updates, news headlines. The student studies harder, but the more noise they let in, the less they retain. One evening, feeling overwhelmed, they decide to take a short walk along the Thames River without headphones, without company. The quiet sound of the water, the cool breeze, and the absence of digital noise begin to calm their nervous system. Suddenly, the formulas and concepts they were struggling with earlier start to connect more easily in their mind. Silence became their teacher, guiding them toward focus and understanding. Silence has another quality. It teaches us patience. In a culture that values instant results and fast answers, silence reminds us that wisdom takes time. A gardener in the UK knows this lesson well. When they plant a seed, they cannot rush its growth. They must wait silently, nurturing it with care, trusting that in stillness something powerful is happening beneath the soil. The same is true in our lives. When we sit silently, even if we don't see immediate results, growth is happening inside of us. You see, silence is not passive, is active. It works within us, teaching us clarity, patience, resilience, and awareness. But it requires courage to face it. For many, The first encounter with silence feels uncomfortable. If you've ever sat in a quiet room without your phone, you probably noticed your mind jumping from one thought to another. You might even feel restless, as if you need to do something to fill the space. But if you sit a little longer, the discomfort begins to soften. Your thoughts start to slow, like waves settling after a storm, and then a calm presence arises. This is the moment silence becomes your teacher. Think about great leaders, thinkers, and creators throughout history. Many of them valued silence as their source of strength. Abraham Lincoln often withdrew into moments of quiet reflection before making critical decisions. Writers like Virginia Woolf and poets like William Wordsworth found inspiration not in constant chatter, but in silent observation of the world around them. Even today, CEOs of large companies speak about their thinking time, moments of quiet, where they step away from meetings and emails to let clarity emerge. In our personal lives too, silence shapes relationships. Have you ever noticed that the most meaningful conversations with loved ones often happen after a pause of silence? A mother in California sitting with her teenage daughter might realize that it is not constant advice that creates connection, but the silent space she holds, allowing her daughter to share openly. A father in Manchester driving his son home after football practice might find that it is the quiet moments in the car that open the door for honest conversation. Silence creates space for understanding that words sometimes cannot reach. In this noisy world, silence is revolutionary. It is a teacher available to everyone, but embraced by few. If we allow it, silence can teach us who we are, guide us in our decisions, strengthen our relationships, and nurture our wisdom. So, I ask you to reflect. When was the last time you sat in true silence? Not scrolling through your phone, not distracted by background music, not planning your next move, but simply present with yourself. Because in that silence, the greatest teacher is waiting. Silence does not only shape our thoughts, it reshapes the very way we live our daily lives. When you step into silence, you are stepping into a mirror that reflects your true self back at you. And sometimes, what you see in that mirror may surprise you. In the United States and the United Kingdom, people often describe life as a constant race. Wake up early, rush through breakfast, commute in traffic, answer emails, attend meetings, care for family, and by the time evening arrives, energy is drained. In this fast-moving cycle, silence may feel unnecessary, even unproductive. But here is the paradox. Silence is what gives meaning and quality to everything we do. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone in Los Angeles, sitting in heavy traffic on the freeway after a long day at work. Their first instinct is to turn on the radio, scroll through their phone at a red light, or fill the space with constant activity. But what if, instead, they turned everything off and simply sat with the silence of their car? At first, it might feel uncomfortable, the hum of the engine, the impatience of other drivers, but slowly, breathing in that quiet space, they might notice their stress softening. They might even gain insights into a problem at work or a challenge in their personal life. Silence transforms an ordinary traffic jam into an extraordinary classroom for the mind. Silence also teaches us about emotions. In a world filled with noise, emotions often get buried. When we feel sadness, anger, or fear, many of us immediately distract ourselves, scrolling through social media, watching TV, or surrounding ourselves with chatter. But silence does not allow distraction. It insists that we feel, and by feeling, we begin to heal. Consider a young professional in London who has just experienced a breakup. Friends encourage him to go out, party, and forget about it. And while social distraction may numb the pain temporarily, the deeper wound remains untouched. One evening, he chooses instead to sit quietly in his apartment. No television, no phone, just himself and his feelings. At first, the silence feels heavy, even painful. Tears come, memories replay. But as time passes, he begins to notice that the silence itself is holding him, allowing his emotions to flow without judgment. Through this process, he slowly starts to rebuild his strength. Silence became his therapist, teaching him to accept and move forward. Silence is also a tool for creativity. Many of the greatest ideas in history were born not in noise, but in quiet. A scientist walking alone in a garden, an artist staring at a blank canvas, a musician sitting with an instrument in the stillness of night. All of them lean on silence as their foundation. When the noise outside is silenced, the imagination inside begins to speak. Think of J.K. Rowling, who famously conceived the idea of Harry Potter while sitting quietly on a train ride, or Steve Jobs, who often spoke about the importance of taking long, quiet walks to think deeply. Creativity does not come from rushing or constant distraction. It comes from silence, where the mind is free to wander and connect ideas in unexpected ways. For everyday people too, silence can spark creativity. A teacher in Chicago, exhausted after a noisy classroom, might sit in her living room with a cup of tea after the children go to bed. In that quiet, she may find herself inspired with a new way to connect with her students. An entrepreneur in Birmingham may sit silently before making a big decision, and in that silence, the right path reveals itself. Silence teaches us to listen, truly listen. In many conversations, people are not really listening. They are only waiting for their turn to speak. But silence teaches patience. It reminds us that listening is not about responding quickly, but about understanding deeply. Picture a couple in New York City arguing late at night. Both are speaking over each other, voices raised, emotions heated. The noise of the argument fuels more misunderstanding. But if one of them chooses silence not as a weapon, but as a space, they create room for the other to speak, to feel heard. That silence can shift the argument into a conversation, and the conversation into healing. Parents especially can see this lesson. A child may not always need words of advice. Sometimes they just need the silent presence of a parent who listens without interruption. A father in Scotland sitting quietly with his teenage son fishing by a lake may not say much, but in that silence, trust and connection grow stronger than words ever could. Silence also helps us rediscover our relationship with nature. Cities are filled with constant noise, but step into a forest in Oregon or the Lake District in England, and you feel a different rhythm. The quiet rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the gentle movement of water all remind us that silence is not emptiness. It is life speaking in a different language. When people from busy cities take time for silent retreats, they often return transformed. At first, silence feels like deprivation, as if something important is missing. But soon, they realize that silence was the missing piece all along. Without television, without music, without constant chatter, they begin to see their thoughts, emotions, and patterns more clearly. It is like cleaning a window after years of dust. Suddenly, the view of life becomes sharp and beautiful again. In silence, we also learn humility. Noise often comes from ego, the need to be seen, heard, and validated. Silence dissolves that need. It teaches us that our worth is not in how loud we speak, but in how deeply we live. Many great spiritual traditions, whether Christian, Buddhist, or Stoic, place silence at the center of growth, because they understand that truth is not found in constant talking, but in quiet reflection. And yet, silence is not about isolation. It is not about leaving society or abandoning responsibilities. Silence is a companion we can carry into every situation. A quiet morning before work, a pause before responding in an argument, a moment of stillness before making a decision. These are ways silence teaches us daily. Ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed silence to be your teacher? Was it during a walk, while looking at the stars, or in the early hours before the world woke up? These are sacred moments, small yet powerful. And the more we welcome them, the more we realize that silence is not just an escape from noise, it is a return to ourselves. Silence teaches us clarity. It teaches us patience. It teaches us compassion and creativity. But above all, silence teaches us to listen, not just to others, not just to the world, but to the voice inside that has always been waiting. Silence, when embraced, begins to change the way we make choices. Every day, life presents us with decisions, some small, like what to eat or how to spend an evening, and some large, like career paths, relationships, or financial risks. In a noisy world, these decisions are often shaped by external voices, advertisements telling us what to buy, colleagues pressuring us to choose a certain path, society defining what success should look like. But when we bring silence into our lives, something remarkable happens. The decision-making process slows down, and for the first time, we begin to hear what we truly want. Think of a young woman in Boston offered a promotion that requires moving to another city. Her colleagues encourage her to accept it's more money, more status, and on paper, it looks perfect. Yet, she feels a hesitation she cannot explain. She spends a weekend away, disconnecting from the noise, and walking alone, in the quiet of a national park. In that silence, the answer surfaces clearly. What she values most is not the money or the title, but staying near her aging parents and her close community. When she returns, her decision is clear, not because someone else told her, but because silence allowed her to hear her own voice. Silence protects us from impulsive choices. Many mistakes are made in moments of noise, when anger is high, when pressure is loud, when fear is amplified. How many people have sent an email in frustration and later regretted it? How many have spoken harsh words in the heat of the moment that damaged a relationship? Silence teaches us to pause, to hold back, to breathe before acting. Consider a man in London during an argument with his partner. The urge to respond quickly, to defend himself, is strong, but instead, he chooses silence. He listens. He breathes. In that space, emotions begin to cool. Instead of shouting, he responds with calm. That single choice of silence transforms what could have been a fight into a dialogue. The relationship strengthens not because of the words spoken, but because of the words left unspoken. Silence also nurtures creativity in problem solving. Companies in Silicon Valley, for example, have discovered the power of silent meetings, where participants spend the first 10 minutes simply reading and reflecting in silence before discussions begin. What they found is that the quality of ideas and decisions improves dramatically. Why? Because silence allows individuals to organize their thoughts, connect ideas, and respond with clarity rather than reacting impulsively. But the lessons of silence are not only for boardrooms or personal choices. Silence also teaches us about relationships with ourselves and with others. In friendships, silence can be just as valuable as conversation. Two friends sitting together on a beach in Cornwall, watching the waves in silence, may feel a deeper bond than hours of talking. In families, silence often creates the space where love speaks the loudest. A mother holding her newborn child does not need words. The silence between them carries more meaning than any language ever could. One of the most overlooked aspects of silence is how it fuels resilience. Life is not always smooth. There are storms of loss, failure, rejection, and uncertainty. In these times, people often run toward distraction, loud activities, endless conversations, or digital noise to avoid facing the pain. But those who turn towards silence discover something extraordinary. In silence, pain does not destroy us. It transforms us. Imagine a man in Chicago who loses his job unexpectedly. At first, the noise of fear and anxiety fills his days. Friends tell him to stay busy, to drown out his worries. But one morning, he chooses silence. He sits by his window with a cup of coffee and allows himself to just be. At first, the silence feels unbearable. But as he continues this practice daily, he starts to see new possibilities. The fear slowly softens, replaced by clarity about the next steps he wants to take. In silence, his resilience is born. Artists, writers, and leaders often talk about this same phenomenon. Silence is where they find the strength to continue when life becomes difficult. A painter in New York may stare at a blank canvas in silence until inspiration arrives. A politician in Westminster may sit quietly before addressing the public during a crisis. The silence does not weaken them. It prepares them. Even in sports, silence is a hidden teacher. A basketball player standing at the free throw line in a crowded stadium must learn to silence the noise of the crowd and focus only on the basket. A golfer in Scotland must quiet their mind before taking a crucial shot. Silence is not just about being alone in a room, it is about creating stillness within. Even in the midst of noise, silence also plays a role in healing relationships. Many conflicts between family members or friends are prolonged, not because of what is said, but because there is no silence between the words. People interrupt, accuse, defend, and in that noise, the possibility of healing disappears. But when silence enters, when space is created for reflection and listening, the path toward reconciliation opens. There's a story of two brothers in the US who had not spoken to each other for years. After a bitter dispute over their family business, they finally met at a family gathering, and both were ready with arguments and justifications. But when they sat down, something unexpected happened. Instead of speaking first, they shared a long silence. In that silence, they looked at each other and remembered their childhood, their shared history, and their bond. Tears replaced words, and reconciliation began not because of eloquent speeches, but because silence gave space for love to return. Silence teaches us another powerful lesson. It reveals what truly matters. When the noise of daily life fades, priorities become clearer. A woman in San Francisco, who constantly chased career success through endless work hours, may sit silently one evening and realize that her true joy lies not in climbing the corporate ladder, but in spending more time with her children. A man in Liverpool, caught in social pressures, may discover in silence that he no longer needs to impress others, because contentment comes from within. This is why silence is the greatest teacher. It shows us truths we cannot see when surrounded by noise. It teaches without lecturing, guides without pushing, heals without medicine. But to receive its lessons, we must be willing to sit with it, even when it feels difficult. So ask yourself, when was the last time you paused before making a decision? When was the last time you allowed silence to guide your relationships? When was the last time you let silence show you what truly matters? If you begin to invite silence into your life, you will notice that it does not take away from living, it enriches it. It does not make life emptier, it makes life fuller. Because silence is not the absence of life. Silence is the presence of awareness. Silence, when practiced regularly, becomes more than a momentary pause, becomes a way of living. It is not about escaping life, but about engaging with life more fully. The question then is, how can we bring silence into our daily routines, into our busy schedules, into the noise of modern society? The first step is to create small rituals of silence. In the United States and the United Kingdom, mornings are often rushed, alarms ringing, coffee brewing, traffic building, children preparing for school. But imagine if, before all the noise begins, you gifted yourself 5 minutes of silence. No phone, no television, no distractions. Just sitting with your breath, watching the sun rise through your window, or sipping tea in stillness. This simple practice can set the tone for the entire day, grounding you in clarity and calm. Another way is through silent walks. In many cities, whether it is Central Park in New York, Hyde Park in London, or a quiet neighborhood street, people can practice walking without headphones, without talking, without distraction. With every step, they listen not to music or podcasts, but to the sound of their own breathing, to the rhythm of their footsteps, to the subtle life around them. These silent walks become moving meditations, teaching the mind to settle and the heart to open. Silence can also be woven into the workplace. Instead of jumping straight into meetings or tasks, imagine beginning with 1 or 2 minutes of quiet. Some companies in the US and UK are already experimenting with this idea, allowing employees a brief pause before discussions. The result is greater focus, less conflict, and more thoughtful decisions. Silence in the workplace is not wasted time. It is an investment in clarity. Families, too, can benefit from silence. A family dinner in Texas or a Sunday lunch in Yorkshire does not always need to be filled with chatter. Sometimes, simply eating together in mindful silence allows everyone to savor the food, to notice the presence of one another, and to feel connected in a deeper way. Parents who practice silence also teach their children a valuable lesson, that peace does not come from noise and entertainment, but from learning to be still and comfortable with oneself. Another practice is digital silence. Many people in the US and UK spend hours on their phones, consuming endless streams of news, messages, and entertainment. But what if, for 1 hour a day, the phone was put aside, the television turned off, and silence invited in? This hour could be spent reading, reflecting, journaling, or simply sitting quietly. Over time, this digital silence restores mental energy, reduces stress, and creates space for creativity. For those struggling with anxiety or stress, silence can be a healing medicine. Meditation, practiced in silence, is now widely recommended by psychologists and wellness experts. A nurse in California may finish a stressful hospital shift and find comfort in sitting silently with her breath for 10 minutes. A university student in Cambridge may take silent breaks during exams to calm their nerves. These small doses of silence do not just reduce stress, they build resilience, teaching the mind how to return to calm again and again. But silence does not have to be limited to specific moments. It can become an attitude carried throughout the day. Silence means listening more than speaking. It means pausing before reacting. It means being fully present in whatever we are doing, whether washing dishes, driving a car, or talking with a loved one. Silence is not about being mute. It is about being mindful. One powerful story illustrates this well. In New York, a high executive once admitted that the most transformative change in his life came when he decided to begin each day with 10 minutes of silence. At first he resisted. It felt like wasted time when his schedule was packed. But slowly, he noticed that his decisions became clearer. His stress levels dropped, and his relationships with colleagues improved. He realized that silence was not stealing time from him. It was giving time back by making every moment of his day more effective. Another example is a mother in rural Wales, raising 3 children. Her life is filled with noise, school runs, household chores, and constant demands. At first, she believed silence was impossible, but she began practicing silence late at night, after everyone had gone to sleep. Sitting with a candle for a few minutes, breathing slowly, she discovered a reservoir of peace she had been missing. This silence became her anchor, giving her the patience and strength she needed to care for her family. In silence, we also learn gratitude. When the noise fades, we begin to notice the small things we often overlook: the taste of food, the sound of rain, the smile of a loved one, the warmth of sunlight. Gratitude arises naturally in silence because we are no longer distracted, we are fully present, and gratitude, in turn, transforms the way we experience life. Silence also brings us closer to something greater than ourselves. For some, it is a spiritual connection with God. For others, it is a sense of belonging with nature or the universe. In the stillness of silence, many people describe feeling a deep peace, as if touched by something beyond words. Whether religious or not, Anyone can experience this sense of transcendence in silence, and it becomes a guiding force for how they live. But the greatest gift of silence is that it teaches us to listen to our inner self. Beneath the noise of society, beneath the chatter of our minds, there is a voice of wisdom inside each of us. It is the voice that knows what truly matters, what path to take, what choices align with who we are. This voice is often drowned out by the external world, but in silence, it becomes clear. Listening to this voice is the essence of living authentically. So how do we begin? Start small. Begin with a few minutes each day. Create moments of silence intentionally during your morning routine, on your commute, before bed. Gradually, these moments expand, and you will notice silence weaving naturally into your life. You will pause more often. You will listen more deeply. You will feel more connected to yourself and to others. In a world that glorifies noise, choosing silence may feel unusual, even rebellious, but it is in silence that we find strength, wisdom, and truth. As the American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Let us be silent, that we may hear the whispers of the gods." So I leave you with this reflection. Silence is not something outside of you, it is already within you, waiting to be embraced. It is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not weakness, it is power. Silence is not the absence of life, it is the deepest expression of life. And when you learn to listen to silence, you are learning to listen to your inner self, the greatest teacher you will ever know.